All right, so with this live, I'm going to keep it pretty short. I do have other things to do. So I just want to go ahead and jump into it. You'll catch it as you catch it. I don't know if I'm going to leave this up as a replay or whatnot. Hey, everybody, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? Like I said, this is going to be a brief, quick little live. I just wanted to, I just wanted to give my story basically on why I'm no longer a Hebrew Israelite. I haven't been for quite some time, but I just wanted to tell you all because I know it's still a lot of people that follow me and people think that, I am. I don't know why, but they do. So I just wanted to briefly go over it and just let you guys know why I'm not. This is not bashing. Short sounds so appropriate given the topic. Facts. However, I'm not bashing any Hebrews or anything like that. This is not what this is. I'm just letting you know my experience, right? So let's jump right into it. Number one, I started off as a Hebrew Israelite because my mother, right? I was 15 years old. I grew up with my dad. I was raised by my father. And like I said, I grew up with my dad. I was raised by my father in like a Christian background. And his background is Baptist and AME. And so I grew up like Baptist and everything, / AME. And then as I got older, I think like my last year of high school or whatever, I went to stay with my mom. My brother and I went to stay with my mom, and she was a Hebrew Israelite, and that's how I got introduced to it. Now, in the beginning, I was just like, this is ridiculous. I don't care, and but at the same time, I was kind of like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I was for it a little bit because I was like, let me turn this off. Okay, maybe you can hear me now. I was just like, oh, okay. You mean to tell me that Omar, I knew he was gonna pop in here. I was just like, oh, you mean to tell me that like Jesus ain't white? Bet I'm for that. You know what I mean? Like I'm for that. I'm for a non-white Jesus. Like that's cool. And so I hopped in. Just like okay, I could kind of go for it or whatever. Anyway, flash. I started keeping Shabbat or whatever because I live with my mom. I really didn't have a choice. And so when I went off to college, I took a Hebrew, Islam, and Christianity class. No, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity class. And I got introduced to, Hebrew language and just little things. And I was just kind of like, oh, you mean Jesus' name isn't really Jesus? That's like an English translation and all this kind of stuff that my mom had been telling me. And I was just like, oh, it was just kind of making sense for me a little bit. And because I had kind of grew up keeping Shabbat, I just still did it or whatever, just a little bit, not too much because I was in college, right? It was a little wild, but I was kind of doing it still. And then I started my spiritual journey, and I had the quotes here because it really wasn't what I thought it was. But anyway, I started, just like being like, okay, what about my health? Which is why I went vegan. And then I was like, what about my health? What about who I am, my history, things like that. And instead of just like asking, I would ask my family, but I was young, so I really didn't ask too many questions, But instead of like going and really grilling them about who I am, I just was like, let me go and, let me go into research what my mom was talking about, right? Because I was already influenced, I was already mind mapped and slightly brainwashed, just from growing up with her when it came to that. And I'm not saying that to downplay anybody's like belief or whatever. I'm just being real. So then fast forward, I decided to do it for myself. I was just like, it kind of makes sense. I don't want to be Christian because I don't want to, like worship this Jesus guy and he looks nothing like me, and as a quote unquote melanated sister, as a black woman, whatever terms y'all using these days. But as a woman of, very deeply pigmented skin, I was just like, I don't want to worship no Jesus that don't look like me. Like, that don't even make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I was already on the bandwagon for it. And I just kind of fell in deeply into it because I was really looking for that identity of who I am and, who I was. Because, like, the term black is not specific enough, because really black is an admixture. Even though, in my opinion, majority of black people are majority African. That's just my opinion. I ain't saying everybody, but majority from my research. Say what you want. But, not saying that people don't have Native American or, white descendants, because I know I do in my bloodline, but I'm just speaking majority, right? So I was just like, well, this is like, and the way that my mom presented it to me, who's Cuban, by the way, Cuban and black, she was like, oh, well, this is like our heritage, and, telling me all this stuff about, dreams she had and all this kind of stuff, And so I was just like, oh, okay, so we're like Hebrew or Jews or whatever on her side and stuff like that. And that's literally how I started to get into it. So that was like my introduction to it, just through my mom, and just kind of like the in and out. You're not a Moor? No, I'm not a Moor. I do not claim that. That's so funny because I just had a dialogue with a Moorish science guy. Whew. Anyway, so, but no shade to the Moors. It's in the topic. But anyway, so I didn't, I really didn't have an issue with it at first because I was just like, oh, this is my identity. This is like who I am and all that kind of stuff. And then, it got to a point where I got older, and now I'm like 25, 26 or whatnot. And I'm starting to I'm out of college and I'm back home, and I'm starting to go to these like congregations with her and her husband at the time. So who you survived that convo? Did not survive. What's up, Brian? I definitely survived that convo. Let me tell you something, okay? Homeboy was trying to brainwash, honey. I was like, oh my God. Even had the audacity to tell me that Gullah Geechee is not a nation. That's not a nationality. Sir. Okay, Noble Drew Ali just got here, honey. Okay, we been Gullahs. Get out of here. Anyway, but anyway, he, I was already like, okay, I'm out of college. I'm back home, and I was going to these congregations with her because I was learning, right? You're learning. It's kind of like people telling you about the Bible and all this kind of stuff. And in one of those congregations, I came into contact with a guy who, quote unquote, knew the language. And I'm using quotations because at the time he did not know the language, and I'm gonna tell you why later. But I came into contact with a guy who claimed he knew the language and was like, yeah, the Bible's written in Hebrew and everything. And I knew that, but it never really clicked really before. But this time it really clicked with me. And I was just like, oh, right. Like English is a translation. That's not really what the Torah was written in per se, right? At least not the Old Testament, right? That's not what it was written in. And so I was just like, oh, okay, so the language is like the key, and I started to just like go on this. And then, as I'm going to these congregations, you're meeting different people. And when I say I know the major key players in the Hebrew community, I know the major key players in the Hebrew community. Okay. And this is what's going to make this tea strong. And this is why it's so damaging, because they don't know what they're talking about for the majority part, but we'll get there in a second. So anyway, I'm meeting all these people, and I'll tell you why they don't know what it's talking about, because your girl can read biblical Hebrew, okay? I can translate it. I don't need the biblical lexicon and all that kind of stuff. I don't need that. I can literally translate and read the actual text. So we'll get there. So I'm competent now. That's how I can talk this shit. But anyway, so I'm meeting all these people, and, I don't know if y'all ever been introduced to that or in that lifestyle or whatever, but like they're like, oh, you got these people calling, they have this like confrontation about the name of God or whatever, right? And in the Bible is written YHWH, right? But some people pronounce it Yahuwah. Some people pronounce it, Yahweh. Some people say it's not either. It's Ahaya. Okay, so people have all of their own doctrines and beliefs as to what the name is and how you pronounce the Messiah's name and all this kind of stuff, right? And so I started to like listen to these debates online, and I was like a part of some of them in the congregation or whatever, right? And so I really just started to, see, well, kind of not necessarily see, but I started to get into like that life or whatever, that community, and I started to be like, okay, I need to really learn the language. And so I thought that I was learning the language, because initially, I'm not gonna call his name because I don't want to put him out there like that, but y'all will find out who it is. But initially I was told that, the Paleo script is a script, not a language though, but the Paleo language is the language and all this kind of stuff. And, the ox head, the aleph is the ox head, and the bait is the what is it, is the house or the womb, and then the Gimel is like the camel, and Dalet is basically that the letters of the Hebrew language are actually pictures that denote something deeper, like a much deeper meaning, right? Which is BS. That's totally made up, but that's what I was going on in the beginning, because that's what these quote unquote Hebrew teachers were saying. Anyways, I started to be like, well, okay, I need to learn the language. I came across this one guy, very huge in the Hebrew community. Y'all done seen him on Sarnetta. Y'all done seen him on the Dagger Squad with Garfield and everything. Y'all done seen him everywhere. He's huge in the Hebrew community. And at one point in time, I called this guy my friend, right? Who I no longer speak to because he's a liar. So I'm gonna just keep it that way. I'm gonna keep it that way. But anyways, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna teach you the language, and I'm gonna help you learn the language and all this kind of stuff. Because at that time, I was positioning myself. I was a trainer, biomechanics trainer, and I was into nutrition. I was vegan, and I was positioning myself kind of like in that quote unquote conscious community. You know what I'm saying? Like I was positioning myself in that way. And so this is why I was learning language or call myself learning the language and all that kind of stuff. And just like going to these debates and and this is how I knew a lot of these, Hebrew community guys and all this kind of stuff. This is how I knew them, right? Because like I said, they came to the congregations, and then I started to learn the language, and then I followed them online, and then I started to we just started to talk, and then I started to do videos and stuff like that, not teaching Hebrew or nothing like that, but just showing that I'm learning the language. Really, I was just learning to pronounce it, because the people who called themselves teaching me, or the person who called himself teaching me, didn't even know the language himself. Okay. So anyway, mind you, at this point, I've gotten into the whole like Hebrew thing through my mother. Decided to do it and practice it myself. I'm like 26 at this time, right? And I decided to practice it myself. And it came a time when my mom actually was just like, she introduced me to the idea that like, maybe because she is, I don't know, heard or read something or whatever, but she was like, well, maybe, maybe Jesus, like the quote unquote Messiah that had supposedly come already isn't the one that they're talking about in the Bible. It's like this whole thing, right? I don't want to confuse anybody, but you just got to go with the rhetoric here, whether it makes sense or not. But, she was just like, basically, you don't need the New Testament, right? You just need the Old Testament, basically, is what she was pushing me towards. That's not what she believes now, but at the time, that's what she was kind of like suggesting. So, I kind of was just like, oh, that kind of makes sense, And I just did away with the New Testament. And because really in my mind, I was just like, well, if the New Testament is based on the Old Testament, then I really need to know what's in the Old Testament. You know what I'm saying? Like the New Testament, that's cool and all that kind of stuff. Little things change. But if the New Testament is based on the Old Testament, then I need to know the Old Testament. I need to know that like the back of my hand, because these are where the quote unquote commandments come from. Because if you're not familiar with like Hebrewism, they believe or they submit to the idea that, you need to follow these laws, statutes, and commandments to the T, right? So that you can, quote unquote, have eternal life or save your soul, or, whatever that is, right? So I was just like, okay, I need to learn the Old Testament. And at that point, I had gone back and forth between what's the real name of God, what's the real name of the Messiah, what, all this kind of stuff, people going into the quote unquote Hebrew and all this kind of stuff, right? And I was just like, you know what? I am done with everybody trying to tell me what to do. I'm not that kind of person. I need to be self-sufficient. So I was like, you know what? The first guy who initially like introduced me to the language and all that kind of stuff, I stalked him on Facebook. Now I knew him personally, and I asked him for books and stuff like that to learn the language, but he never told me how he knew and how he learned for real, So I was just like, okay, I stalked him on Facebook. I went through his comments and I started to see who he was interacting with, and I started to see certain brothers that would really like go into the language, right? So I clicked on one of them brothers, and that's when I met the Paradigm Crew. The Paradigm Crew, right? And that's when I started to learn biblical Hebrew by an academic scholar who's been in the game for over 16 to 20 years, something like that, plus. He's in the halls of academia, okay? He's not some I taught myself Hebrew scholar or whatever. So anyway, that's how I started to learn the language. Now, as far as like before that, just a smidget before that, I called myself learning the language, but really I was being taught like the gematria and the esoterics, you know what I'm saying? Like the aleph is the number one, and if you add this letter with this letter, you get this, and all this metaphysical stuff. I was learning that type of stuff. And I thought that I was learning the language. I thought that all that was a part of learning the language, but I was not. It was a lie. So what happened was I started to learn how to read, and not just read, but translate biblical Hebrew. That's what happened. I learned how to read. And from that moment, I was like, you know what? Let me go back and look at all of these beliefs and doctrines, all these verses that everybody used to, uphold these specific doctrines. I went back and I saw that there was no devil. There was no Satan in the Old Testament. There's no Satan in the Old Testament. Okay. The only two instances you have of the word Hasatan or Satan, which means adversary in Hebrew, is the first one you have is in Numbers, when I believe his name is Balaam. He's purposing to go on that donkey to curse the children of Israel. And the God of Israel sends this angel to stand in front of the donkey and stop the donkey to stop the man from going to curse the children of Israel. But the word that's used for that angel is Hasatan, which means adversary. Something to note, right? And that quote unquote adversary was in favor of the children of Israel. So that was like, whoa. Mind blown, because what do you mean there's no devil in the Old Testament, right? That makes no sense. I literally grew up with this, not only in Christianity, but I was just thinking this as a Hebrew like 2 days ago, So that blew my mind. And I believe the other instance is in Job, when he's this quote unquote entity is going to and fro, whatever. The deity says, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just going to and fro. And then, he's like, have you tried Job? Have you tried Job or whatever? And there, his name, you would also see adversary or Hasatan there. But it's not in some demonic, like, I'm trying to make you, quote unquote, sin and all this kind. That is not how it is. So that blew my mind, right? And then the second thing was this lie that was going around. What's up? The second thing was this lie going around. I believe that's who I think it is. The second thing was this lie going around that like the transatlantic slave trade was predicted or whatever in the Bible, right? There's this guy going around saying that, right? So, and it's very easy to find out who he is. I'm gonna let y'all do that little Easter egg kind of on your own. But he's going around saying that, you can find the transatlantic slave trade. It's written in the Bible and all this kind of stuff. Well, no, it's not. Okay, Deuteronomy, what is it? 20, oh goodness, what is it? 28:68 or something like that. I don't know, but wherever it talks about the ships going and to and back and forth from Babylon or whatever, that's not what it's talking about. Okay, and so basically, I just went throughout this Old Testament. So I was just going back and forth through these verses, basically through the foundations of the doctrine, and I was going back and forth and translating. Now I can translate, so I'm going back and translating from what I'm reading in the King James translation, and I'm translating directly from the biblical Hebrew, and it just don't say that. It just doesn't say that, and that's another thing that started to blow my mind. Once I saw that all the doctrines that uphold that Hebrew Israelite ideology are false, as far as like all those dogmas and stuff that they believe in, it's not rooted in actual biblical Hebrew. You can only find a lot of that stuff in the translation. And so, I was just like, wait, you mean to tell me that when it's called parsing, basically when you are translating verses from one text to another language, right? When you're translating the verses. So I'm translating from biblical Hebrew into English, and then I'm looking over at the King James, and I'll be like, whoa, that don't say that. Like, this doesn't say that at all. And then why did they even translate that like that? And then I started to understand that no, like the King James translation is a political agenda. It has nothing to do with trying to translate the word of God, right? That's not what it's about. And so basically that just like blew my whole paradigm. The whole even hell not being a thing like in the Old Testament, it just blew my whole paradigm. And I was just like, whoa. And then when I would go back and talk to other people and be like, hey, like this doesn't say that in biblical Hebrew. Learn the language and everything like that. It was they would be like, oh no, you can learn the language, but you still gotta have the spirit, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, wow, that's so sad, because you're literally saying that you're basing your whole life off of what you're reading in this text, but you don't understand that you're reading a translation. So you're reading what somebody says something says. You're reading hearsay. It's like that telephone game, right? Where somebody starts something and at the end it's something different. That's literally what you're doing when you read a translation, aka the King James. And if your quote unquote teachers are not starting you off with teaching you how to read biblical Hebrew, because it's different than modern Hebrew. If they're not teaching you biblical Hebrew, then they are literally like mind mapping you and brainwashing you. I don't care how good of a person they are. I don't care what their intentions are. That means nothing if your soul and your spirit and your whole life is dedicated and predicated upon you knowing what's in that book, but they themselves don't want to learn the language, and then they don't want to teach you. Then that's a problem. So for me, I was just like, you know what, now that I can read and I can see what this is for myself, and even past I'm laughing if he's still on here, because even past, like, once you can see what the book is really talking about, it ain't talking about what y'all think it's talking about. You know what I mean? And that's when you really start to be like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. But that's a whole nother discussion. It's a whole nother thing. But my thing is just, once I realized that people were purposely remaining blind, and it's not that it's just like, oh, it's just one or two words different. No, like this, the biblical Hebrew literally reads a different story than the King James Version. Literally, it reads a different story. So if the people that are quote unquote teaching you are not preparing you by teaching you how to read biblical Hebrew, then they are playing you. No matter what their intentions are, no matter who they are, how good of a people they are, they're playing you, and they're playing themselves, because they can't read it. They don't know what it says. And that's why it's hilarious, because people will be like, oh, well, this book, oh, this verse and this verse and this verse. And I'm like, hilarious, because it doesn't say that for real. So congratulations, you played yourself. And I don't mean to say it like in a condescending way. I'm saying it here because I'm jokingly playing, but when I'm talking to people, I don't do it that way, because, but it's just like you are willing to deny your whole family. You are willing to go online and listen and be a part of these 3, 4, 5 hour lectures. You know what I'm saying? And you're willing to do all of that to uphold this ideology, this doctrine, but you're not willing to learn how to read the very language that you say your soul is predicated upon. Wow. Like you say your soul is like based, the saving of your soul is based on this, but you're not willing to learn the language. Wow. That's sad. It's very sad. Just like I had, and people always do the whole, like, you said all this about, I'm gonna go back to the comments and everything. Let me keep doing this, but and people will be like, oh, well, and this is that whole spirit thing, right? Watch this. People will be like, oh, well, I asked God, or the Most High, or the Creator, Yahweh, whatever. I asked the Creator for its name and everything like that, and it revealed to me it was, X, Y, and Z. Like some people will say Yahuwah, some people say Ahaya, or whatever. So this one person in particular, 12 plus years, you're going around saying Yahuwah, and then somebody shows you that that's not how you read it in the grammar. Somebody literally shows it, and now you're saying Yahweh. So what happened to this? You can know how to read it, but you got to have the spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like, that don't even make sense. It doesn't. So it's like I say, me coming out of Hebrew Israelitism or whatever was really just me learning and becoming literate in the actual language that it was written in. And that's sad, right? And I'm not saying I down it or anything like that. I don't down the Torah or anything like that. I have a different association with it. I enjoy it for what it is. But when I became competent and I had the eyes to see, I was just like, I was able to actually make a choice for myself, because I grew up Christian, so I really didn't have no choice there. When I stayed with my mom, she was Hebrew Israelite. That also affected me, because it just added on to the whole Christian thing, but everybody black. You know what I'm saying? And that affected me. And so it was kind of like I'd never really had a chance to choose what I really felt and what I was really gravitating towards and what was really me. I just didn't have that chance. So when I began to learn biblical Hebrew and I started to translate it, I was just like, yeah, this ain't me. This is not me. Boy, y'all don't even know who y'all worshiping. Y'all have no idea who that book is about. Y'all have no idea what y'all worshiping. And that's another thing. When you learn the language and you start diving in that thing deep and you start looking at those names and translating, you be like, whoa. This ain't what you thought it was, sweetheart. This is something totally different. Let me go back up and read these comments before I, let me ask y'all something. It's 13 people on this live, right? How in the heck am I getting all this attention for some Hebrew Israelite stuff that I thought nobody was interested in? This is ridiculous. I like my Hebrew Israelites in leather capes and shoulder pads. You know what? If I had it, I would have put it on. I would have put it on. I would have put it on. And it's so funny because I remember I was walking in some super short shorts one time, and it's like cute crop top, and I had some like Doc Martens on or whatever. And I walked right by these guys like in these big purple and gold robes or whatever, and they like preaching out there like, yeah, you Israelite and all this, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like walking by them laughing like, y'all can't even read what it says. You have a logical, scientific, free mind. Yeah, I mean, it's still a little in prison, I believe. I'm purposely negative free. Do you speak Yoruba language? Not fluently, but I can hold a conversation. I'm still learning. Sidebar, you are just so... Oh, gracias, I appreciate it. The demagogues must hate to see you coming. Oh, yeah. But you know what? The thing is, the reason why they hate it is because they're lazy. They're lazy, and they have been teaching people falsehood for this whole time, and they don't want to accept the fact that they need to learn real biblical Hebrew, because that whole Shalom, Lashawan, Hakadesh, and all that kind of stuff is not a real language. It doesn't follow any grammar rules, and I'll briefly tell you why. Because when you say Shalom, so first off, language has tenses, right? It has gender and number, but it also has tense. So for instance, if I say is, was, and were, you would be able to understand the tense I'm speaking in, right? You will understand I said he is, meaning currently. He was, meaning in the past. But this made up language with Lashawan, Hakadesh, and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't have any tenses because they only use like A-class vowels. So everything sounds the same. So it's similar to me being like, he is to the store. He is, I'm just going to say he is going to the store, right? And you're like, oh, okay, he's currently going to the store. But because there's no tense change, because all the vowels are the same, somebody could be like, no, I didn't say, I'm not saying he's going now. I'm saying he went to the store. And I'm like, but you said is, that's a current tense. And you're like, but I'm saying was, I'm saying past tense though. That's literally what that is. When you only have like one vowel, because it's just like, I don't know if y'all speak Spanish, but it's just like you have to have, it's got to sound different, right? Is, was, were, so that I can figure out if it's you were, or I was, or he was, or she was. I wouldn't say I is, unless you speak in a different dialect or whatnot. But if we're speaking grammatical American English, you wouldn't say I is or he were. You wouldn't say that. It would be wrong, right? But that's what the whole the shalom and all that kind of stuff, when they start speaking all that kind of crap, that's what they're talking about. They have no tense to their language. It's not even proper grammar. Somebody woke up and made it up. They say God gave it to them, but use a lie, because it don't even make sense. Dang, all this Bible study I've been doing for nothing. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's for nothing, but I would say that you need to learn. You need to get to someone who can teach you biblical Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? So that you can build on what you're doing. Because my whole thing is, you can definitely I don't know too many, but you can definitely, I know a few. You can definitely learn biblical Hebrew and be an Israelite. I wouldn't say Hebrew because technically that's like a byword or whatnot. It's like calling somebody a slur, you know what I'm saying? Which is another thing people don't know because they don't know. But you can definitely be an Israelite and know biblical Hebrew. Or you can follow the Torah and know biblical Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? My thing is, you need to be literate so that you can make that choice for yourself, right? And it's not just you being like, oh, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to go to hell, or I'm going to do this and all that, and I'm going to do all this kind of stuff, or the devil's doing this to me and all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying there aren't evil forces out there, though. I'm just saying that this devil character that people think is in the Bible is not. So it's good to just be competent so that nobody's telling you what to do, especially when you believe that your soul and your spirit and your life is based on this. You know what I'm saying? But if someone is in spirit, they speak the language they don't know, but there are some people who translate that. Yeah, I believe that's like speaking in tongues and stuff like that. But when they say you got to have the spirit, what they're talking about generally is nothing. I'm not purposing to be condescending, but generally when somebody says that, it's a cop-out. It's a way for them not to have to put in the work to literally be literate, right? It's just like any sheshe, right? You can do all the necessary steps, but if your character is bad, right? What is the proverb, right? If you can have all the wealth, but if you have bad character, the money belongs to someone else, right? You have to put in the work no matter what you're doing. You got to put in the work. You have to become competent, right? Like, you're not just going to do something all of a sudden, like, boom, you got all this money. You have to put in work. It takes work, right? So that's what I'm saying. And when they say the spirit, they're not talking about like what you may understand as spirit. They're talking about basically themselves, talking to themselves. The elephant in the room with so many of these cults is the inherently embedded anti-Africanness and misogyny. Oh yeah, I agree. Some quote unquote Israelites consider themselves to be like African and stuff like that, but they still be on some BS too. How long were you Hebrew Israelite? I just came into the room. Sorry if you already said it. No, you don't have to apologize. It's all good. You just came in. So when I was, I would say started when I was like 15, and I'm 31 now, and I've been clean for about but I'm what has been like almost 3 or 4 years, something like that. So for about 13 years, I was Hebrew Israelite-ish or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Some people don't understand what Orisha they are serving, but it's very important to know. Oh, yeah. Very important to know. Very important to know. I'm just reading through the comments. Did you learn Hebrew from a book or a teacher? I learned Hebrew from a teacher. Okay. A professor at that. And he's in the halls of academia. This guy is a scholar. Okay. So I learned legit biblical Hebrew. No BS. No BS. As a matter of fact, I'm almost done parsing Ruth. So I learned legit biblical Hebrew. Like, I didn't cut any corners. I'm not learning any gematria. I'm not learning any Shalom Hakadesh or whatever they call, the Lashon Hakadesh, whatever. I'm not learning any of that extra stuff people made up. I'm learning the legit language. Like, you could put the Torah in front of me and give me a DDB, and I'd be able to put work in from that, and my paradigm chart, of course, because I'm not remembering all them conjugations. But the language is so important because it's just like when you're translating, and this is why it's so important that you learn the language. When you're translating, the word is a verb. The verb, right? The verb is conjugated, meaning it changes based on the tense, the number, the gender, all that kind of stuff, right? It changes a little bit. It modifies, right? So it's like I said, the verb in English, to be, right? I believe it's to be. Yeah, to be. And you have is, was, were, that type of thing, right? That's called a conjugation, technically, right? It's a change in the verb or whatnot. The thing about Hebrew specifically is that, oh man, I forget what they're called, but basically you have these binyanim, right? And you have these different binyans which are going to determine how you translate something. So what I mean by that is this. Let's say you have one stem and it's like the call, and it's like simple active, right? Meaning like I kept, right? So it's like the way it was explained to me is this way, right? So if I have an apple and I give it to you and I said, hey, keep that apple for me, and I walk off, right? And I come back the next day, or let's say I come back 3 days later and I'm like, hey, where's my apple? And you're like, oh, it's right here. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, dang, the apple's rotten. Why did you let my apple rot? And you like, you just asked me to keep it for you. Okay? No, notice the word I use is keep. Now, there's another binyan, and I believe it's PL. And it's intensive. It's an intensive active, meaning it's a process that goes along with it. And when I say active and passive, I don't mean past tense and present tense. I mean active as in I'm doing it, or passive as in it's being done to me, right? So if you have a simple active, which is the call stem, and it's like I kept, and then you have an intensive active, which is like, I believe it's PL, and it means I preserved. Those are two different actions. So if I give you that apple and 3 days later I come back and it's rotten and I only ask you to keep it, that's a different storyline than if I said, hey, preserve this apple for me. Now when I come back in 3 days, it's still nice. Maybe you put it in the fridge. Maybe you sealed it. I don't know what you did, but you preserved it. And that is very important, because when you are translating, there's a major difference between I kept and I preserved. Okay, those are two different things. So if you don't understand how to conjugate those verbs and how to change those verbs, and what each change is signaling to you in order to translate it properly, you're lost. You might as well throw in the towel. You don't know what's going on. And that's why people don't understand how important it is to know how to translate these languages. Not even just biblical Hebrew, no matter what you are learning, right? You need to know the language, because the DNA of a people is in the language. Like, it's so important. Yeah, I heard that they don't use vowels. I heard one claim that there were no vowels in ancient Paleo Hebrew. He's an idiot. He's lying. The Medunetter also seems extremely suspect as a legitimate language. But I believe the Medunetter is a legitimate language. I believe Brother Reggie may be like, I don't know. I've heard that he can read it or something like that. I don't know if he can speak it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, probably can't speak it because it's like an ancient language, right? Just like I wouldn't speak biblical Hebrew. I mean, you sound ridiculous, but yeah, I believe he can read it though. I just don't know how many. It's not that many that can, but it's a few. From what I've heard, Medunetter is scientifically legit. Yeah, no, it is. Have you heard of the language Manakati? That's supposedly the original language of the scriptures. I haven't. So I've studied the works of the academic linguists such as Theophile Obenga. Okay, I'll check that out. Hebrews, Egyptians, Pro-Africans, all these groups separate you and expect you to act a certain way. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the group. You know what I'm saying? I can't say every Hebrew, every, Egyptian or Egyptologist, whatever. I can't say everybody who is a part of those things acts that way. And the only reason why I can't say everyone is because some people are doing what they're doing, really thinking that, like, it's their way to bring black people together. You know what I mean? But then you have a vast majority that are very like, this is what we doing over here, and y'all doing that over there. You know what I mean? Etymology is key. Yeah, it is. But you know what? Like, people, even the guy who, the meticulous one, he's always about etymology, but you still need context, and you need a teacher. You know what I'm saying? You need a teacher. Yeah, I asked because I would like to learn it. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I will let y'all know who my teacher is. I train with Mitts, okay? If you want to know how his style is, take your beautiful behind to YouTube. Not right now, though, because I need to finish what I got to say. But go to YouTube, type in Dagger Squad, Garfield, and type in Zion Lex and Mitts, and you'll find my teacher right there dragging that ass. And not even really in a drag way, but just giving lessons. And you can really see who's the scholar and who's really doing this work and who's just playing around, Because there's no way after 27 years of teaching Hebrew that you don't know what matres leciones is, which is literally day 1, hour 1 of you learning verb conjugation. It's ridiculous. So anyway, many Christians claim Hebrew culture because it was Jesus' language when it's a whole different culture. Yeah, it is. It is a different culture, It is. It's a little hard though to even say that, because not that it's not different, but just like, but when you're learning and you're studying from the Bible, what is the word? Is it philological? Basically, everything you're doing is based on the text itself. It's based on the literary work. So you need the grammar in order to be able to even draw forth what's being told to you, And so when you say Hebrew culture, that's just a little hard, because I don't think it's that black and white in the Torah like that. But I get what you're saying. You know what I mean? It's so many things that changed in there. Serving E5 no leadership will work with Iwa Pele. Exactly. No, for real, it will. But if you don't have that good character, like, it's not going to serve you. It's, I mean, there are ways where you can obviously help yourself have good character and things like that, but you need to have good character, right? I'm always told that all the time. Maintain it. Let's see. Queen, they never read the word for understanding. Well, the thing is that if you can't read the word, you won't understand it, So, like I said, people come in and they're like, oh, the Spirit gives understanding. But if you don't know what's actually being said, then it doesn't matter what your understanding is. You do not know what's being said. Just like I said, there is no devil character in the Old Testament. But if people in the Spirit tell themselves, or they think that there's this devil character in the Old Testament, then that's going to be a problem no matter how much understanding you get, right? It's just going to be a problem. Hold on. Let's see who's trying to come on. Okay. I may have a little time to bring you on or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a problem. So I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying, but it's not even really just reading for understanding. The first step is to learn how to read. That's the first step. Then you understand, Truth. I know in translation, you always lose something in definition. I know this from studying Spanish. Okay, yeah. Change the context. Like shalom means peace, different from English greetings of hello. Yeah. And it's so many times I'm like, listen to something in Spanish and I look at the little English subtitles and I'm like, wait a minute, that they didn't even say that. Why would they translate that like that? That doesn't even make sense. Like, it could be something as simple as, I'm going to the store. Voy a la tienda. And they'll say that in Spanish. But in English, it's like, I'll be back. And you're like, what? Why would they even do that? It doesn't make sense. You don't need to like change it like that. You know what I'm saying? Like you could literally just use the exact words. And then some things are totally just lost in translation. Like you're just not going to get it if you don't understand the language, right? Very important. So what are you now? Great question. In order to understand all this, you have under language first. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Let's see. Lots to unpack here. I hope you save this. I'll save it. I wasn't going to because I didn't even think y'all was going to be interested like that. So many things in the Bible aren't real but metaphysical. Yeah, I agree. And it's a different conversation. I agree. A lot of things are allegorical. I really wish that people could actually read the language more because then we could have a different conversation. And it's only one other person on this live, if he's still on here, that would be able to have that conversation with me. But yeah, I think it is very allegorical. The devil is in us. Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying there aren't evil forces out there, though. I'm not saying that. Let's see. Do you believe in the other books like the book of Jasher, Enoch, and man, first off, I don't believe in nothing. If I need to believe, I'm gonna start to question that. I need to see something. And I'm not saying like, I have to see everything as in like it needs to be in front of me and that kind of stuff, but I need to see some results. Okay? Cause sorry, but you know what? When it comes to like those extra books and stuff like that, okay, so this is another thing. When you're learning to read the biblical text, you start to understand that things were not written in chronological order. It was not Genesis or Bereshit, and then Shemot or Exodus, and then, what is it? Devarim? No, is it third? I don't know. But it's not Devarim as in Deuteronomy, and then, Wayikra as in Leviticus. It's not in that order like that, actually. They weren't written in that order, right? I forget, and don't quote me on the exact order, but I believe one of those first 5 books of the Torah was written like after the prophets or something like that, or it was written much later, right? And you would think that they were written consecutively, but they were not. And so then you start to understand different writing styles because now you're reading and you're like, I'm noticing patterns as I read. It's just like if you write something and your mom writes you something, you know the difference in style. You know the difference in speech, right? It's just like you can read your favorite author and you like, oh, that's this person. I know because I know the style, right? Like if you read Shakespeare, you like, oh, that's Shakespeare. I know, because you know the style. So it's similar to that. And when you start understanding and learning like Hebrew and biblical Hebrew, and you just start getting into that whole thing, you start to understand style, and you start to see differences in literature and writing, and it's like, oh, and then you start to learn, you know, what was written and why and all this kind of stuff. And so then you'll get into that research of like Jasher and Enoch. I don't have anything that says that they are quote unquote legit sources, but then again, I mean, I don't know everything, you know. I never really went down that rabbit hole really, because I was just like, I didn't care enough after, you know what I'm saying? Like, I realized that I was being lied to in many different ways. So, I mean, I think that would be a great project for you to check out, though. I'll get back to you on that. How about that? I'll get back to you on that. I'll look at that and get back to you. Yeah, that's why I mostly teach people how to work on their Iwa which is good character, you guys. Because it said when you get initiated in Ifa or Orisha, the next thing to learn is your Iwa. Yeah, no, facts. You need that in order to get your blessing. So the books are spiritual. Define spiritual for me, right? Define it. Please save it, because I want to Google the name of the scholar you mentioned. You know what? Go to my YouTube channel, John Yale Biz. Go to my YouTube channel. I did two live videos. It's called Dispelling Doctrines. And it was myself, the brother Dwight or Ifa Bukola. It was 3 other brothers, I believe, and the teacher. We were all on there discussing those doctrinal topics that I was talking about a little earlier, and breaking it down for you in the language so that you can see, right? Like what's going on and the difference between what it says in the translation in King James and what it says in the biblical Hebrew. So go to YouTube, John Yale Biz. Just go to my YouTube and you'll be able to see, and just scroll down and you will see Dispelling Doctrines. You can't miss it. It's on there. So I'll save it, but just go to my YouTube and check it out. Next live video, you'll tell us more about your beliefs. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about my beliefs in my next live. Who created you would give information? Who created you would give information? Oh, okay, I was about to say, what? Who created you would give information? Yeah, who created you would give information. I agree. However, people can be so ethereal with that too, so I don't know. Vaikra, yeah. Came in late. Please say this loud so I can watch from the start. Oh, I got you. Information is passed on for us to evolve. Yeah, that's true. Information will not fall from the skies. I believe the scriptures were recorded during the time of the Babylonian captivity, years after the kingdom of Israel and Judah. Yeah, so this is what I mean when I'm talking about they weren't written consecutively, right? You had many captivities, Assyrian, Babylonian, but there's another one I just can't remember, but you had many captivities and things like that were happening, and all of a sudden out of these captivities you get these scriptures, you get these books, right? But then they're like chronologically in a different order than they were actually written, right? So it's interesting. I'm listening to you, but yeah, girl, you fine. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My family was in Liberia with the Hebrew Israelites in the late 70s. No, what? Like the Demonians? What a complete shit show. Today is the same hustle, run old black folks seeking a personal and collective empowerment. Yeah, and I'm very well versed with the Demonians. I used to work with a few of them, and they were like super connected to, you know, the main place or the main, I don't know, Benami and all those people, whatever. But they can't read biblical Hebrew either. So, you know, because it's just like there's no way you can read biblical Hebrew and still teach some of the stuff that they teach. You know, there's just no way. There's no way. It's a scam. No, it's facts. A lot of these people are out here scamming. And for the people who do have good intentions and they're just purposing to, you know, give their perspective, they still have that like preacher Christianity mentality, right? And they're just like, I'm gonna tell you what God told me to tell you and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, okay, like he could tell me himself too. Like if we both reading the same book, I mean, Children of Abraham is a great book that opened my eyes. Okay, I'm not familiar with that book, but I'll check it out and see what it's about. But yeah, no, so and I'm not saying that, you know, you don't get certain things, but like let's just say somebody asked me, what do I practice now? I practice good character. I practice iwapele. That's what I practice. Okay, I practice good character. That's what I'm about. You know, I respect everybody's beliefs and what they choose, as long as you're not hurting nobody and messing with little kids. I respect what people choose to do. I respect their beliefs, which is why I wasn't purposing to attack any Hebrew or any Israelites or whatever on here. I respect people's beliefs, you know. And I think as long as it helps you to be a better person, and it helps you to practice better character, and it helps you with your moral compass, you know, I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with it. I don't think that you need to lie in order to perpetuate your belief, though. I think that's ridiculous. But I'm cool with it. So my practice now is good character, you know. And I guess you could, you know, I want to tell you, but sorry, I didn't hear your answer. But do you believe in the books of Jasher and Enoch? Okay, yeah. So I don't believe in those books, but I don't know everything, you know. But even before people get into Yasher and Enoch, the majority of the reason why people get into those books is because they're looking for the edit. They're looking for the added information in the Bible because it's so skippy. You know what I mean? It just skips around and stuff like that. And so they're looking for those, like, and to like that metaphysical stuff. Like, because when you read Enoch, he's talking about being up in the clouds and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I just, you know what? I would say learn biblical Hebrew and then see if you want to go back and read those books. How you know what is good character? Where did you learn that? I practice Isheshe, guys. Okay, I practice Isheshe. Still learning about my Levi tribe. Don't know enough, but I am familiar with the Bible itself. Yeah. Well, you know, I would say make sure that you can read biblical Hebrew, because like I said, not knowing how to read biblical Hebrew is literally reading a hearsay. It's reading hearsay. You're playing telephone the entire time. And I'm not purposely to be condescending or anything like that. It's just, if you don't know how to read the biblical Hebrew yourself, what'll happen is you will read King James and they're going to lie and they're going to make stuff up, and you're going to believe that, and you're going to base your life off of something that somebody else made up. Rather than, if you believe that the Torah is the word of God, then you should know how to read the actual word of God, which is the biblical Hebrew, so that you can determine for yourself what's going on and what's being said, so that you can live the way that you need to live, you know? So yeah, that's literally like my whole story. That was the live, guys. For those of you who are interested in my teacher, MITS, then like I said, what will I do? I don't know how to get the information to you guys. I may just go live. You know what? I'll make a post maybe, and then I'll just let you guys know how to get to my teacher or whatnot. But you can go to my YouTube channel and go to John Yo Biz on YouTube, and then just scroll until you see Dispelling Doctrines. I have 2 lives there, and my teacher is there. So I believe his Gmail is like mitziel@gmail.com. But anyway, I'll give you guys the information and everything. I believe that was all the comments. I appreciate you all for coming into this live, and to everybody that will see this later, shalom, shalom. Oh God, I'm so petty. I love it.